We felt at home here immediately, and we were welcomed by very many people. Benjamin immediately became a part of the youth group, but probably our highlight would have to be the mission trip to Cuba a few years ago.
I agree.
That was a life-changing mission trip. And we look forward to many more years here, Lord willing.
My name is Velma Holst. I'm 94 years old, and I first went to the First Church of the Nazarene in Carthage, Missouri, when I was 11 years old. But the story that I wanted to tell you is what happened at a revival that we had with Sammy Sparks. A very unusual situation. And we had been praying for a great revival, and we had a lot of people that we wanted to get saved. And so we were praying in the prayer room of the church before every service. And this one evening, we really prayed through in the prayer room. Came out just knowing something was going to happen. And as Sammy Sparks gave the sermon and then the altar call, and as the singing began, it was like a swish through the sanctuary, just a live air, I guess you would say. The Holy Spirit going through the sanctuary, and the altar was filled with seekers, and one was Archie Connor's husband, Earl Connor, that we had been praying for so long. It's a great power of the Holy Spirit, and I've never been in a service quite like that before.
My name is Margaret Hartman, and I've been in the church since 2007. I'm not sure what month, but I can remember bringing my little aunt, who I've mentioned many times, Vivian Olson. She was a missionary in Africa, and I'd bring her to the church for missionary meetings and missionary speakers, and every time she walked in this sanctuary, she would say, "I love coming to this church and walking in the sanctuary because you can feel the presence of the Holy Spirit when you walk in." I love my aunt and I love the Lord.
When I was about in second grade is when they decided to build the new building, and I grew up just a few houses down from the church, and so I remember almost daily coming down with my dad, and we would look over, and he was seeing if everything was built right. And so it was an exciting time to know that you were going to be in a new church. There was going to be air conditioning. It was going to be something that you could have ownership. I remember the first Christmas, my dad said we were going to have a living Christmas tree so that we would then give it to Jesus or give it to the church and plant it. And so that sounded like a great thing, except a live Christmas tree has a big burlap, ugly bottom, and it looks like a Charlie Brown Christmas tree. As a family, went down and planted the tree out here on the Fairview side of the new church. And that tree just kind of grew, and it grew, and it grew, and it grew. And I was teaching third grade in Sunday school. And so at Christmas time, I would tell the kids the story about giving the tree to the church, to Jesus, and how he took that little and made such a big thing out of it, because that tree was as tall as the steeple or the arch of the church. It just became a symbol to me of what God could do if you gave to the church. And then Dustin came to be the pastor, and he decided the tree needed to be cut down. So I was kind of mourning that, but then he decided that we would use that tree to build the cross that went in the place at the corner of the church. And so it was always kind of the symbol we gave to the church, and it became a symbol of the greatest Christmas gift of all when Jesus came down, and then they made the cross out of it.
I came here in August of 1951, and I was single, and but immediately a certain person tried to woo me, and eventually, after about 3 years, he won me. I didn't have nursery for my first 2 children, but they decided that Jeff and Randy both needed help. And so they started the nursery. I filled a lot of positions. I was a missionary, treasurer for the district, and different things, but I'm glad I did. Because, I mean, I think it makes you as a well-rounded person. And so the Lord provides, and it surprises you.
My name is Elaine Baker, and I was a little girl when my parents moved our family from Nebraska all the way down here to Carthage, Missouri. In the 1930s, my parents were not Christians, and so we never went to church. It was just a non-Christian home. In the late 1930s, we had a knock on our door, and these people wanted to know if we wanted to go to Sunday school and church. And their names were Ralph and Eva Gardner, lay people from the Carthage church, the old church way downtown. When I heard the gospel message, L.D. Sharps was our pastor, and he was a fiery preacher. Someone came and touched me on the arm and said, "Wouldn't you like to go and pray?" Well, all that took, it just melted me into a puddle. And I went and prayed my heart out. God forgave me. And I was so happy telling my parents, testifying to my mom and dad what Jesus had done for me. And I was so happy. I never wanted to give up Jesus. And so now, I'm almost 96. And you know what? Jesus said, "I will never leave you or forsake you." And he never has, and he never will. Thank you.
I am Terry Nell Rushing. I have been at this church my whole life. My first memories are at the old church of our kindergarten classroom, or 2- and 3-year-old classroom, it would have been upstairs, that smelled like crayons. And Pauline McCormick was my teacher, and that's about all I remember from that building. We moved here to this current building when I was 6. Played the piano here full-time for more than 41 years, from the time I graduated from college. My mom was the temporary choir director at that point and needed me. But the story I want to tell you today is about the lady that I followed to the piano bench. Her name was Archie Connor, and she was a longtime church member. She played beautifully. She was a tall, stately, stoic type woman, and very smooth, and yeah. But she played everything by ear beautifully, but she didn't read music. But I heard in just the last couple of years, as we've kind of prepped for this anniversary, that when she was a young woman, she had some sort of an ailment with her hands, and evidently had webbed fingers or something. And she was, of course, very concerned over that, and had prayed. She prayed to God that he would heal her hands, and if so, she would give them to him in service to him. And at a cottage prayer meeting, which just means in somebody's living room, they prayed strenuously for the healing of her hands, and it came. And I don't know if it was suddenly at the prayer meeting or if it was a gradual thing or how it happened, but her fingers became normal, and she was able to play beautifully, which she did for many, many years. She also had an experience at the old church, I'm told, where she was playing and the legs under one end of the piano bench collapsed, and so it slid, and she kind of slid down on the bench, but just kept right on playing and never missed a beat. So I have really big shoes to fill, and in 41 years I'm not sure I filled them yet, but my hope is to give my talent to the Lord as well.
I remember when they had the groundbreaking here for the original site, and Archie Connor, who I thought was the classiest lady that ever came through the church, she was part of that groundbreaking with her high heels and everything. And then they had another groundbreaking and another groundbreaking, and then when it was the last one that we had for the children's edition, I got to be a part of that groundbreaking. And so I thought, how neat that the heritage goes on. My dad was in the groundbreaking here, and then I was in the last one.
We're Dan and Adonna Mortimer. We haven't been here all that many years, and the reason we came to become members was the fact that we went to another church in town that on Sunday morning and Sunday evening we came by the parking lot to this church, and it was always full. And we'd come by on Wednesday night and it was full. And we'd come by various times during the week and it was full. So I told Adonna that there must be something good going on in that church and we need to check it out. So we did. And a couple of things impressed us right offhand. Pastor Dustin greets you at the door when you come in. We've been to a lot of towns and a lot of churches. We've never found another preacher that greeted you when you came in to the door. And that was very impressive. And then I got involved in the Run for Life when Kent taught that. And at the end of it, the culmination, we ran a 5K race. And this one happened to be up in Jasper. And when we finished the race, Pastor Dustin was there to shake all of our hands. And I thought that was, to me, that's heartwarming. I know that was a very small thing to some people, but the fact that he took his time on a Saturday morning to come and shake our hand was big in my eyes. Okay, that's the reason that I, put the input into us making the switch and coming to this church. I'm done.
One of our biggest honors with Carthage Nazarene was being able to be directors of the Joy Group, just older youth. And it was so much fun. They all have a story and they all want to tell it and they all want to be a part. And we need to keep that going because it is a very intricate part of our church. One of the little oldsters asked me one day, "Well, you always call us oldsters. When are you going to be an oldster?" Well, that will happen someday, but not yet. Anyway, we love you. We love our church.
I'm Janice Kaughman, and I think we came with my family into the church in the early 70s. I had 3 children. They get involved in the youth group. I think Bill and Mary Riley were probably in charge of the youth group at that time. And I specifically remember one time my oldest son, and he'd taken his sister, they'd come to the youth group. They came home that evening so excited because she had gone to the altar and was saved. And they were just bouncing off of the walls, so they were so excited. They went on, my son married here. He was on the board for a while. This was my oldest one, Rick. And my daughter is now married to a minister. So it's all come around and I love this church.
And then Dustin came along when he became pastor here, and then he was after us to become members. And so after going through the classes, we became members of the church. And then after a year or two, he said, "You need to be a board member." And so I ran for board, and I went to second service, so most of the voters were in first service, so they didn't even know who I was. So after 2 times of being a loser on getting on the board, I thought, well, I'm not going to do that anymore. And then the 3rd year come around, and they sent me a deal, wanted me to run for church board. And I said, okay, God, if Dustin gives me a call, I'll run again. And Dustin gave me a call in just like a couple of minutes. And so I run for church board, and I've been on and off it for ever since. And we just keep growing and growing, and it's just home now, and we've prospered greatly, and in spiritual and in our wealth here on earth. It's all, the more you can't outgive God. The more we gave to Him, the more we've received. And so it's been a very great ride, and it was one very good decision that we made, and we're very happy to be members of this church.
We thought about a lot of the experiences through the years that we've attended church here, and the one that really came down to the final was when we first started coming to the church, and why we did. Prior to coming to Carthage Nazarene, we attended a small rural community church, and there were times where our daughter, Shay, who was in her early teen years, was the only teen in class. And so it made us start thinking about what to do for our children. Plus, we wanted more and more for our education and Christian growth. So we felt prompted by God to start looking for another home church.
And our home is located east of Carthage, just on out Fairview Avenue, and we would drive by this church often, sometimes several times a day. We noticed the cars in the parking lot. Every day of the week there'd be something going on, and on Sunday the parking lot would be filled. So when God started talking to us about making a change, we decided we'd try Carthage Nazarene. And I don't remember whether we tried any other churches or visited elsewhere, but from the minute we walked through the doors, we felt at home here. Everyone was so friendly. And it wasn't long before Herman and Velma Holtz contacted us and asked us to come into their homes for fellowship after church one Sunday evening. And they were one of many. There were lots of people that welcomed us here.
We feel that God has led us here, that God did lead us here, and we are still looking forward to what He has for us in the future.
My name's Bob Compton. I go by Bob. My really name's Bobby. I started to the Church of the Nazarene in the late 50s, and I was kind of drawn here because of a girl named Norma Jean Rose.
My name is Norma Compton, and I came to church here in January of 1951. I served in several capacities. The most important one was I was band greeter, and I had 2 nurseries, and the lady was running back and forth from the babies to the toddlers, babies to the toddlers. And I went to the pastor and I said, why can't I do one of them nurseries? He said that would be fine. But then she left, and here I was stuck with 2 nurseries. So I asked for a door between the 2 nurseries. And Rick Griffith made sure that I got a door between the 2 nurseries. And so that was my job for 20 years in taking care of everybody's little babies. That was what God called me to do, and that's what I did.
My first service in the church, I guess, was teaching 4th and 5th grade boys. Well, at that time, they had each grades, and the 5th grade would move out when they got, and the 4th grade would come in. Well, I don't know whether the boys learned anything from me, but there was one thing I do know that they learned that they got disciplined, because Jack McCormick was in my class, and whenever the 4th grade boys came in, he told them, he said, now, you're not going to fool around and be naughty in this class. You're going to have to sit down and behave yourself. So I guess I taught him something. I served about 33 years, I think it is, on the church board. Well, when Brother Wendell Parris came to Carthage to be our pastor, the congregation decided that we need to move because we were down there on Garrison and Chestnut Street, and the building was not, was an old building, and he gave us an estimate what it would cost. Well, we said, well, we don't want to borrow that much money, or we didn't want to go in debt that late because we didn't have much money. We started talking about cutting things down, and Archie Connor was on the committee. We were going to talk about removing those stained glass windows up there, and Archie Connor set her foot down and said, no way, we're going to have stained glass windows.
Okay, one of the stories I wanted to tell you out of the minute books is about how they had Sunday school back in the early 30s. This small church didn't have very much extra space, and so in the early 30s, the young men's Sunday school class was meeting in the attic. The only problem was the only way to get to the attic was with a ladder. And so in 1931, the board asked the trustees to look into putting in a stairway to get to the attic. Can you imagine trying to climb a ladder every week to get up to your Sunday school class? So they looked into that possibility, and also during that time they found out there was a window broken up in the attic. Now I can't imagine with a bunch of rowdy boys how a window could possibly get broken in the attic, but you can put your imagination to that one. Well, it ended up that stairways take space, and the church just didn't have any space, and so it was not feasible to put in a stairway. So in 1931, they came back and said that they couldn't do that, so they were just going to fix the window in the attic, take out the stairway, and move the boys' Sunday school class downstairs.
My name's Chuck Davis, and this has been my church since 1964. Earliest memories was with Pastor Wendell Paris, and after church, me and sisters would run up and grab his leg and call him Uncle Paris, and that's some of the earliest memories of this church.
My name is Mark Farley. I moved to Carthage about 25 years ago. I bought the farm from my brother and sister-in-law, and we never dreamed that we would ever come to misery. I got involved here with Celebrate Recovery, and one of the fellows asked me if I wanted to go to jail. And I said, well, if they'll let me out, yes, I'll go. And so they let me out afterwards, but we had 10 guys that we brought a program of Celebrate Recovery to 10 guys, and we could do that every week before the COVID come along. I had been giving a lot of Bibles out that the church provided for me, and I've gone through many boxes of Bibles that Celebrate Recovery Bibles, and that's kind of been my joy.
My name is CORA GILLETT. My husband and I came here about 20 years ago, mainly because we had heard from the former pastor, Jolie Tompkins, that his wife was very interested in cross-cultural ministry because of all the Hispanics that were in the area. Virgil and I had been missionaries with Wycliffe for 10 years in Suriname, South America, and cross-culture felt comfortable to us. COVID has taken a toll on the church, as it has every single one, and we're running about half. But I'm so glad that I had the opportunity to be part of this work from the very beginning and see what God has done in the lives of people. We've seen miracles of salvation, we've seen miracles of healing, and God has been with us all along the way. I want to thank the main church for their hospitality and their help and encouragement to us from the very beginning. Thank you all.
Hi, my name is Kathy Harris. I've been a member of the church all my life, and my grandmother Nell Davis and Ferris Davis and my great-grandmother Fanny Davis were charter members of the church from way back. One of my favorite memories is Johnny Whistler. He was a blind gentleman who came to church every Sunday with his wife and his seeing eye dog, and on special occasions he would do the special music, and he would play the piano better than anybody I've ever heard, and he whistled along with it, and he had everybody's attention. It was the most beautiful thing I have ever heard in my life.
It's just the heritage, the people that have made this church such a lighthouse in Carthage.